Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip back through the centuries and wander barefoot through the humid paddies of the ancient Vietnamese river deltas, where farmers, stubborn as water buffalo, tried to outwit the monsoon floods with nothing more than cleverness and bamboo. You stand in the middle of a green ocean of rice, the air sticky and buzzing with insects, the smell of damp earth all around you. Overhead, clouds pile up like dark, silent mountains, promising either life-giving rain or total disaster. You look down at your woven sandals, wondering if they'd survive the season, and honestly, you probably wouldn't survive either. If you had to grow rice here year after year while the rivers tried to drown you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to post your location and what time you're listening. It's always amazing to see how far this sleepy little community reaches across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You breathe in the damp, rich air of the Vietnamese lowlands. In every direction, villagers move through the mud, carefully tending bright green rice stalks. The sun beats down in the morning, but by afternoon, the clouds boil into towering anvil shapes and the winds whip through the banana trees. You follow a farmer, his conical hat tilted forward as he eyes the horizon suspiciously. Around here, water is everything. Blessing, curse, and eternal conversation topic. This river, the Red River, churning red-brown with silt, has a personality of its own. Every year it lurches up over its banks, swallowing fields and homes in a foaming frenzy. People dread it, respect it, even joke about it at night while warming their hands around rice wine. And yet they never move away. The river's floods also leave behind precious new layers of fertile soil. Without those floods, rice would never grow as tall, as glossy, or as sweet. Historians still argue whether the farmers had no choice, trapped by poverty, or whether they willingly danced with danger to gain these fertile fields. The truth is probably somewhere between. Some families lived here for dozens of generations, and you feel their presence in every mound of earth and every fish trap set out along the muddy banks. Rice was life. There was no second option, and so people learned to read every sign, every hint the river might offer, desperate to predict when it would rise and how far it would go. You might call them ancient hydrologists, although they just laugh and point to their bamboo poles. Yes, bamboo. It was more than just a plant, more than a building material. It was a kind of quiet partner, a weather ally. Bamboo was everywhere. Fencing, baskets, cooking chopsticks, roof supports, ceremonial flutes, water dippers, even little fishing traps for catching eels. Bamboo could grow a meter in a single day if the conditions were right, sending up shoots that looked as delicate as green porcelain and then hardening to iron-tough poles in just a few months. Imagine a village of thatched roofs all pinned together, with bamboo pegs, the pathways fenced with woven bamboo slats, and every single farmer leaning on a bamboo staff. Bamboo was so tied to daily life that you might think these farmers would see no new use for it, but they did. They used it too. Read the river. The next time you feel like the weather app on your phone is failing you, remember these ancient rice farmers. They had no barometers, no satellites, no computer models. They had to build their forecasts on the river's color, on the pattern of floating twigs, on the flights of certain birds, and, most of all, on the bamboo stakes they would drive into the riverbank at key locations. The bamboo poles stood like silent sentinels, disappearing in the flood and then re-emerging as the water receded, telling you precisely how high the river had gone. Older farmers memorized every bend in this river, every swirl and eddy, every sandy bank that might break and sweep a village away. When you stood next to one of these elders, he could tell you if it was time to flee or time to plant. Just by glancing at the bamboo dot, of course, they didn't get it right every year. The river sometimes fooled them, arriving later than usual, or with a sudden unstoppable surge in the night. But still, generation after generation, farmers adapted, whispering their findings around the hearth, passing them down like priceless family heirlooms. One fringe tidbit you might enjoy. Some villagers claimed the bamboo poles themselves could sense the river's anger, creaking and shifting days before a flood. Historians still argue whether that was true or simply a poetic way of describing water-soaked wood bending under pressure. Either way, people would listen for these bamboo warnings as if bamboo could talk. And so, as you stand in these muddy fields, letting the evening mosquitoes sample your ankles, you feel a strange calm. You know the river will rise. You know it will test you. But you also know that bamboo stands ready, a green ally rooted in both myth and practicality. You reach out to run your fingers along a bamboo pole, feeling the smooth coolness, and imagine how many floods it has already seen. You shift your weight, the sticky mud tugging gently at your sandals, and turn to follow a narrow path toward the river itself. The air is heavy, draping across your shoulders like a damp blanket, and the sounds of the Red River grow louder with each step. It's not a polite little brook, this river. It's a massive, snarling creature, with currents that snatch away careless children, oxen, and even entire bamboo rafts if you let down your guard. The Red River, or Sanghan, is named for the reddish silt that clouds its water, painting it the color of watered-down brick dust. Each monsoon, that silt comes roaring down from the distant mountains of Yunnan, carried by rain so fierce they'd make a roof tremble. Villagers up and down the river watch for that telltale rusty tint, because it's their first clue of what the river might do next. The moment the river begins to change color, a soft wave of anxiety ripples through the hamlets. Historians still argue whether these flood prediction skills were passed down through an organized system of village elders, or more haphazardly among families. You suspect it was a little of both. Farmers would point to a twist in the river or a sandbar suddenly vanishing, then mutter to their neighbors about what that meant. If they agreed, the word would spread faster than a rooster's crow in the morning. As you stand on the high riverbank, you notice farmers driving more bamboo stakes into the muddy shore. These aren't random decorations, of course. Each stake is a subtle measuring stick. You see that the bamboo poles stand at staggered intervals, carefully marked with notches. Every morning, someone will come to check where the water laps against those notches. If the river rises too quickly and covers the second or third notch overnight, that's when the old farmers start muttering about moving the cattle to higher ground. And bamboo doesn't just measure the river passively. It acts like a tiny weather diary. The flexible, fibrous columns respond to swelling water, sometimes bending under new currents or shifting in the river's shifting silt beds. You watch as one pole wobbles, just enough to catch a farmer's eye, and then springs back to its upright position. To the untrained eye, it's meaningless. But to these farmers, that slight movement might spell the difference between a peaceful season and catastrophic flooding. A fringe belief, half forgotten today, claimed that bamboo poles would actually groan before the biggest floods, a soft, creaking noise as the roots shifted below the water. Elders claimed they could hear it on the wind, a strange whisper that meant the water spirit was stirring. Historians still argue whether this was real or merely the power of suggestion after too much rice wine. Modern scientists might explain it away as the bamboo settling against a shifting sandbar, but you can't help feeling a little chill imagining a river so alive it could speak through its bamboo sentinels. It's a detail that tugs you deeper into the story, as if nature itself was giving you a coded message, if only you knew how to listen. You wander closer to the water, watching fishermen hauling up woven traps. These traps, too, are made from bamboo, carefully tied and smoked to resist the rot of the wet season. Each fish wiggling inside gives a tiny clue about the water. Certain fish come up from the deeper channels before a flood, following some ancient instinct to get out of the worst currents. The farmers knew this well. If they found too many mudfish in the shallows, they would start worrying. The fish, after all, were smarter than the farmers some days. The Red River is unpredictable, even on a good day. In the dry months, it shrinks to a meek trickle, revealing islands of polished pebbles where children chase crabs. But in the monsoon months, it becomes a wide, murderous snake. Ancient chronicles record entire villages washed away, while neighboring towns survived untouched. All because of a bend in the river's path or a newly formed sandbar. Even after hundreds of years, the river refuses to be fully tamed out as you watch the sunset turn the water from orange to inky black. You sense how the farmers felt centuries ago, that uneasy blend of hope and fear. The flood brought fertility, the precious silt for their rice, but it could also bring ruin. That duality was baked into every conversation, every bit of advice passed down over steaming bowls of rice. Tonight, standing at the river's edge, you can almost hear their voices. One warns you to never trust a clear day in July. Another tells you to look for driftwood patterns, reading the river like a fortune teller reads tea leaves. There is a quiet poetry in it, a confidence built on observation, repetition, and 1,000 tiny details you'd miss if you weren't paying attention. You shift your gaze to the dark bamboo poles once again, their slender shapes a final line of defense against this beast of a river. In your mind, you try to imagine memorizing the river's shape year after year, the way old farmers did. Maybe you could do it if your life depended on it. But then again, you remember how most people today panic if their weather app is off by 5 degrees. And there is the gentle humor of it all. These barefoot farmers, with no engineering degrees, no maps, no scientific instruments, managed to track a river more successfully than some modern flood monitors. Sure, they had setbacks, but they survived and they taught their children, who taught their children, until their knowledge became as much a part of the Red River as its silt dot as a frog croaks from somewhere under the bamboo bridge. You smile, letting the gentle night air cool your skin. Here, in this place, history feels personal, as if you could dip your hand into the river and touch the memories still swirling through it. You leave the river's edge, stepping carefully onto a narrow dike path where rows of bamboo sway in the night breeze like silent guards. These bamboo stalks are not just wild plants springing up by chance. They are planted, tended, even loved by generations of farmers who know exactly which variety grows tallest, which bends best, and which resists rot longest dot by the glow of a half moon. You see a small family gathering near their bamboo fence. The grandmother is sharpening bamboo slats for weaving new baskets, while the children chase a frog through the puddles. The father is testing the strength of a fresh bamboo pole, pressing against it with all his weight until it flexes and springs back with a soft creak. You realize that in this world, bamboo isn't just a tool, but almost an extra family member. Sturdy, trustworthy, and always there. Everywhere you look, bamboo has a purpose. Roof beams, water scoops, chopsticks, fish traps, carrying poles, even toothpicks, all sprout from this one green gift. The farmers joke that if they had to pay bamboo wages, they'd all be bankrupt. There's a lightness in their laughter, as if bamboo itself is in on the joke. The best part, they'll tell you with a grin, is that bamboo renews itself. Unlike big hardwood trees that take decades to mature, bamboo is generous, sending up new shoots season after season. You might chop it down on Monday, and by Saturday you'll see tiny green spears pushing through the earth, already plotting their place in the next fence or bridge. Historians still argue whether the villagers truly understood bamboo's root systems or simply observed its relentless regrowth year after year. Either way, these farmers had learned not to waste a single segment. They'd split even the scraps into skewers for cooking. Some families would polish the smooth inside walls of bamboo and use them to store water, a technique so natural to them that they barely saw it as technology. But you can see it, standing there in the dim night. It is technology, born from close observation and endless patience. Bamboo in the hands of these farmers becomes a language. They know how it bends, how it creaks, how it leans toward the river's pull. And in that language, they hear the subtle hints of coming disaster. A strange fringe belief pops into your mind as you pass a low bamboo gate. Some villagers believed bamboo could protect them from evil spirits who traveled with the floodwaters. They hung small charms made of bright cloth on the bamboo to ward off river demons. Historians still argue whether those cloth charms had any religious power, or whether they were simply a practical way to make sure you spotted a bamboo pole even in muddy floodwater. Tonight, a gentle breeze lifts the charms, making them flutter softly, and you can almost believe in the spirits yourself. The villagers have stories to match. A bride whose wedding had to be moved because the river threatened to swallow her family's house. A baby born on a bamboo raft when the floodwaters rose too quickly. Through it all, bamboo was there, floating, bending, rising again with the families who trusted it. As you cross a narrow bamboo bridge, you pause and listen to the hush of the night. A soft creak of the poles under your feet, the ripple of water against its supports. The faraway laughter of farmers sharing a cup of rice wine after a long day. It's a lullaby of sorts, a hymn to survival. You feel a strange kinship with these people who lived with water as their greatest enemy and greatest friend. The bridge you stand on is a small marvel. Really, no nails, no screws, just carefully lashed bamboo tied with fiber ropes, able to hold surprising weight. The villagers could build these bridges overnight if needed, hopping from one patch of safety to the next, like a spider laying down its web. Even the children learned to repair broken rungs before a storm, in case they had to run for higher ground. And you wonder, as you sway gently on this narrow path, how many modern engineers could do the same with only their bare hands and bamboo. Not many, you suspect. There's a quiet genius in these old ways that feels comforting. You might chuckle about their superstition, about how they thought bamboo could warn them about river gods, but you cannot deny their craftsmanship. One farmer catches your eye from the far bank, holding up a fresh-cut bamboo pole as if to say, "This is enough." And maybe it is. Maybe bamboo, with its simple strength, is enough to face the Red River year after year. You turn, letting the night breeze cool your face, and trace the patterns of woven bamboo fences stretching into the darkness. It feels like a web, a living system of guardians keeping the water in check. Bamboo walls, bamboo floors, bamboo cooking racks, bamboo shrines. The entire world of these farmers is built from a plant you might walk past in a modern park without a second glance. Yet here, it is everything. It is a sword against nature's fury, a cradle for babies, a raft for the elderly, and a measuring stick for the farmers who refuse to abandon their land. You rest your hand on a bamboo rail and feel its faint warmth stored up from the sun. It feels alive, almost as if it remembers. Tomorrow the river might rise, or it might not. But tonight, you trust the bamboo and the generations of hands that shaped it to hold steady until morning. You walk along the riverbank in the early dawn. The world still hushed and silvery before sunrise, and notice how bamboo poles pierce the muddy earth in neat, unbroken rows. Each one stands like a sentinel, silent and dignified, telling a story. Only those who pay close attention can understand. For these ancient Vietnamese farmers, the first thing to do each season was to plant a row of bamboo stakes along the banks, an early warning system. You see one old farmer measuring carefully from the waterline, driving each pole down into the sludge with a rhythmic thunk. The poles stand shoulder high, each marked with faded red paint, recording where last year's floods had reached. It's a kind of memory, a bamboo memory, etched into simple wood so no one forgets. Historians still argue whether these flood markers were standardized between villages or whether each family improvised their own. In the end, it hardly mattered because every family kept track, retelling flood stories night after night so no one grew careless. One slip, one missed warning, and the river could take everything. You move closer and run your fingers over a bamboo pole, feeling the smooth nodes where the farmer notched each flood year. There's something comforting about those grooves, like tally marks on an old diary. This farmer has recorded not only heights of past disasters, but also the dates, scratched in a script so ancient you can barely decipher it. A knowledge lives on the pole itself, waiting for the next generation to read. If you listen carefully, you can hear farmers debating. Some swear the river will flood early because of distant upstream storms. Others argue the dry winds mean the river will stay tame. They all gather around the bamboo markers, pointing, arguing, even joking about whether the fish traps might catch more rice wine than fish if the waters come too fast. You grin because humor is their armor. Beyond measuring water, bamboo had another use, guiding where to plant rice next. If the flood was light the previous year, they might risk planting closer to the bank. If the flood was heavy, they'd pull back to safer, higher paddies. One bamboo pole could shape the entire growing season, a kind of ancient crop insurance policy with no paperwork and no fine print. Sometimes, villagers would paint symbols on the poles, little circles for a good harvest, triangles for lost. Fields and strange spirals whose meanings even the elders no longer remember. These symbols survived centuries of monsoon, sun, and wind. You feel their weight, as if each spiral still holds a silent prayer. There was even a fringe story passed around on rainy nights. If you placed the bamboo stakes in a perfect spiral pattern, you could confuse the flood spirit into sparing your house. Historians still argue whether anyone took that seriously or whether it was just a tale to pass a long evening by the fire. Still, you smile at the thought of a river demon being tricked by clever bamboo. As the day brightens, you see children hopping from one bamboo pole to another, balancing like tightrope walkers while their parents call them to help with chores. Bamboo was everywhere, part of every childhood memory. You remember one farmer laughing that children learned to stand on bamboo before they could even talk properly. It's a gentle reminder that their bond with this plant began early, long before they understood floods or rice. A woman comes to check the poles, noting tiny water bugs that crawl up the sides. She shows you how the bugs often flee higher before a big flood, sensing changes in pressure. The bamboo becomes a climbing frame for these little prophets. Another subtle sign that farmers read as carefully as we might read a weather report. Stand back, amazed by how much these stakes reveal. Past tragedies, future dangers, the quiet hopes of farmers who would rather face the river than give up their land. Bamboo was their measuring stick, their warning system, and their history book. In modern times, you might wonder why they didn't build stone walls or big earthworks. But these farmers knew that even the strongest walls might break, while bamboo could bend and sway, returning season after season. Bamboo didn't fight the water. It reasoned with it, adapted to it. And in a world where nature always wins, That's probably the smarter strategy. Another older farmer approaches, his beard streaked with gray, and gently taps a pole with a hollow bamboo hammer. You hear the faint echo, a dull thunk. That tells him how firmly the pole is set. His eyes twinkle and he shrugs as if to say, "It will do." There's poetry in that gesture, humble yet certain. Standing on the bank, you breathe deeply, taking in the smell of damp grass, river silt, and fresh-cut bamboo. It is a simple world, yes, but a world that works season after season, year after year. If the river takes, the bamboo remains. And if the bamboo stands, then so do the farmers who trust it. You settle into a shady spot under a stilted bamboo house, listening to the creaking frame shift in the breeze. It's the perfect place to watch how farmers listen to bamboo as they've done for centuries. The wind rattles through the stalks in a soft, woody percussion, a language that these villagers have learned to interpret. You close your eyes for a moment and tune in. The bamboo sounds like a giant musical instrument, creaking, sighing, clicking, as if talking to itself. One farmer, balancing on a small stool, rests his ear against a long bamboo pole jammed deep in the river mud. It looks silly at first, but then you realize he's testing how the pole vibrates. If the river current strengthens, the pole will hum or tremble in a specific way. Incredibly, these gentle shifts can warn of a coming surge. You think of it as a homemade flood radar, powered by nothing more than bamboo and a farmer's patient attention. Historians still argue whether these farmers had a formal system to pass on this bamboo language, or if it was more a matter of apprenticeship and observation. Either way, the knowledge stuck, repeating through countless generations. There's another curious bit of folklore here, a belief that bamboo poles could store the anger of the river inside them. If you listen close enough, you'd hear the poles complaining days before a bad flood. Maybe superstition, maybe just keen observation of faint creaks under pressure. But the villagers took it seriously enough to teach their kids to listen. At times, you have to laugh. It's as if every pole has a gossip session with the river, then spills the secrets to the farmers. One young boy shows you how he listens, pressing his ear right up against a bamboo culm. He says it feels like hearing the river's heartbeat. If that doesn't make you smile, nothing will dot beyond flood warnings. Bamboo sounds also offered clues about water pressure, bank erosion, and even how much silt was collecting. When a sudden strain snapped a pole, a sharp, echoing crack, people came running to see whether a bank collapse had started. It was their flood siren in a way, warning everyone that something had changed. You walk along the embankment as the morning sun climbs higher, watching villagers pull out old, splintering poles to replace them with fresh bamboo. Each new pole is sharpened to a wicked point, driven deep into the muck, then measured, marked, and checked for proper flexibility. A stiff pole might snap, too soft, and it will bend uselessly. The farmers know the difference by feel alone, standing here. You admire that patience. They could have given up, moved away, tried to grow something easier on higher ground, but they didn't. Instead, they studied every breeze, every swirl of river, every note bamboo could sing. One older man jokes that if bamboo ever wrote a song about floods, it would be a tragic ballad in 100 verses, with each pole singing backup harmony. You chuckle along with him, the joke as gentle and familiar as the river itself. Beyond practicality, the villagers made bamboo a kind of spiritual companion, treating it with small rituals. Before planting new poles, they might sprinkle rice, wine around them, asking for protection from the river. Some even tied bright scraps of cloth to the tips, hoping these would catch the eye of river spirits and distract them from the village. Historians still argue if these rituals had any logical basis. But the sense of security they gave was reason enough. As you wander away from the house, you hear the faint music of a bamboo flute somewhere nearby. Its mellow notes float across the water, blending perfectly with the sighing of the poles and the chirps of early crickets. The tune seems to harmonize with the river's constant churn, as if the farmer is having a quiet conversation with the current. There's a sweet calm in this moment, despite the river's unpredictable nature. The villagers trust that bamboo will warn them, that its soft music of creaks and rattles will catch their ears before disaster strikes. You imagine yourself learning to hear those hidden messages, and the thought makes you feel more rooted, more prepared, almost part of the land itself. If the water rises tonight, the bamboo will speak. And if it stays silent, you'll know the flood still sleeps. In either case, the farmers stand ready, their ears trained, their eyes on the river, and their bamboo sentinels holding vigil. A breeze rushes over you, carrying the warm smell of sun-baked mud and fresh-cut bamboo. You let the sound wash over your tired mind, letting it calm you. There's something beautifully hypnotic in knowing that even in a world without screens or satellites, people could find security and hope by simply listening. You wander farther along the river path, where you spot a small group of farmers working around what looks like a woven bamboo fence jutting straight into the river's shallows. At first, you think they're just trying to keep the fish in, but then you notice the clever design. This is a bamboo weir, a kind of trap for fish, yes, but also a trap for information. These farmers know something you're just beginning to understand. Fish behave differently before a flood. The river fish, guided by instincts older than any human memory, start moving to calmer waters days before the water surges. By weaving a series of bamboo fences, the villagers could see which fish showed up where and in what numbers. In a sense, the fish became weather reporters, slimy, wriggling. Wonderfully oblivious meteorologist. You watch as one farmer hauls up a fish basket teeming with silver carp. He squints, nods, and tells his son that these fish never appear here unless the deeper channels are turning dangerous. It's subtle, but to them it's as loud as a flood siren. Historians still argue whether this fish forecasting was an organized knowledge system or just a lucky observation. But it stuck. Generation after generation, villagers checked their bamboo weirs for clues, their hands dripping river water while they debated if the catch spelled doom or blessing. One boy runs up with a small catfish and yells that it bit him. His father laughs, then looks at the catch with a more serious eye. These catfish, apparently, like to slip into backwater pools before a flood. The father ruffles the boy's hair and tells him he's caught more than supper, he's caught tomorrow's weather. You almost want to applaud. These people had created a living flood warning system that swam straight into their traps. It's brilliant, funny, and heartbreakingly practical. At the same time, these bamboo weirs helped feed the village. When times were calm, they provided a steady trickle of fish, enough protein to keep children's bellies full, enough for a small celebration feast when the harvest was done. And in times of danger, they doubled as alarm bells. The gentle sarcasm of the farmers isn't lost on you. They joke that the river might drown them, but at least it will feed them first. You can almost hear their chuckles echoing off the water. The bamboo itself is a wonder here, flexible enough to bend with the current, but strong enough to keep its shape. The villagers sharpen the stakes, drive them deep into the mud, then weave split bamboo strips in a diamond pattern. The result looks like a giant basket laid sideways across the riverbed. Fish get funneled in, and farmers get their data. If you look closely, you can see charms tied to the bamboo, bits of cloth, tiny copper coins, even carved wooden turtles. These are offerings or maybe bribes to keep the river spirits happy. Historians still argue if those charms really had any effect, but the people believed in them wholeheartedly. And if believing gave them a sense of calm, then why question it? There's something mesmerizing about watching the water swirl around the bamboo. You see small leaves get trapped against the weir, then freed, then caught again, dancing in a quiet rhythm. You wonder how many storms these bamboo fences have survived. The sun bleaches them white over time, turning them into pale bones of the river, but still they stand. You step closer and catch the faint scent of freshwater fish, a little sharp but comforting. The smell of life, of food, of a river that both gives and takes. A small child tries to help sort the fish, but mostly ends up splashing water on everyone, and you smile. Even children learned how to read these traps. It was like their first lesson in river literacy. One farmer tells you, half joking, that he sometimes thinks the fish gossip about the coming rains, sending messengers upriver to warn their cousins. And he listens. Because in a world where one mistake can wash away a year's work, you learn to take every clue, even if it comes from a catfish's tail flick. The sky is changing as you stand there, drifting from pale gold to a dull steel gray. The air feels heavier, pressing against your skin. And you wonder if maybe the fish knows something you don't. But then a breeze picks up, carrying the fresh scent of bamboo and river water, and you feel steady again. The bamboo weirs will keep talking to you, even if the river changes its mind every 5 minutes. You take one last look at the fish, shimmering in their baskets, and realize they are more than food. They are part of the story, part of the river's endless cycle, part of the farmer's endless vigilance. As long as the fish keep swimming, the bamboo will keep standing and the people will keep listening. You move away from the bamboo weirs, following the scent of fresh cooked rice drifting from a gathering near the village shrine. There, villagers are busy preparing for a festival, laughter and the clatter of clay bowls blending with the rivers. Hush! But woven through the celebration is something deeper, something that connects joy and fear in a single knot. The monsoon. Every year, the farmers line up their biggest festivals to match the coming of the rains. It sounds backward at first, celebrating just when nature threatens to wash you away, but for these people, it's perfectly logical. They believe that if they welcome the rains with music, dancing, and offerings, the river might treat them more kindly. So you stand among them, breathing in incense smoke and catching glimpses of bright silk banners waving above bamboo poles. Drums pound softly in the evening gloom, keeping time with the rising breeze, while children chase one another around the shrine's bamboo fence. You see the elders pouring small cups of rice wine to offer the river gods, bowing carefully toward the water's dark path. Historians still argue whether these rituals were meant to truly appease a river or simply to unite a community. In a moment of shared anxiety, maybe it was both. When the river swelled with muddy rage, the villagers needed more than strong dikes and bamboo poles, they needed hope. A group of teenage boys lifts a long bamboo pole decorated with colored ribbons, swirling it around like a maypole. They laugh, occasionally losing their grip and chasing after it through the mud. These poles, called say no, serve both as festival props and subtle flood indicators. If the pole leans too far after heavy winds, everyone takes it as a clue that the river is changing. It's a mix of party and science. Leave it to these farmers to turn a celebration into another flood forecast. One cheeky grandpa elbows you and says with a grin that the bamboo likes to dance with them before it dances with the flood. You can't help but chuckle, picturing the bamboo poles twirling away in the current after a serious storm. As night falls, the festival reaches its peak. You hear bamboo flutes joining the drums, the reedy notes sailing across the rice paddies like little sleepy birds. The air grows heavy with humidity, wrapping around your shoulders while lightning flickers far on the horizon. Still, no one looks worried yet. They trust that the festival and their bamboo flood markers will give them a fair chance to survive. Women lay out offerings of sticky rice and bananas at the shrine, plates balanced on woven bamboo trays. A faint breeze swirls through the courtyard, rattling charms that dangle from the poles, like tiny bells singing their protective song. You find a peacefulness there, even knowing the river's power. Somewhere in the shadows, a child whispers. A prayer to the bamboo itself, as if the plant can hear. And maybe it can, after all. The bamboo has been listening for centuries, carrying memories of monsoons long forgotten by living humans. You wonder, standing there with your sandals half sunk in the muddy path, if you'd have the courage to throw a festival just when disaster might arrive. These people do. They offer up music, dance, laughter, and a splash of rice wine to a river that could kill them. And they do it with a grin. Historians still argue if the monsoon timing was just a coincidence of harvest cycles or a genuine weather prediction strategy woven into the culture. But seeing the villagers tonight, you suspect it's more of a conversation between human and river, spoken in songs and bamboo poles dot as the dancing slows and families begin to drift home. You stay a moment longer under the glow of flickering oil lamps. The festival's bamboo poles stand silhouetted against the night sky, still bright with streamers, gently rocking in the wind. Each one is a reminder that hope is stronger than fear, even in the face of rising water dot in a world where everything is uncertain. These people find a strange comfort in the predictable cycle of river, rain, flood, and recovery. The bamboo stands tall through it all, joining their festival in spirit, the calm companion to every season's chaos. You trail your hand along one of the poles on your way out of the courtyard, feeling the grain worn smooth by years of ritual. The drumbeat echoes inside your chest, fading as you step away, but the soft voice of the bamboo, the voice of measured patience, lingers long after the music stops. The morning after the festival, you find yourself drawn to the quiet space at the heart of the village, where a small group of elders gathers near a family altar. Here, tradition meets weather science in the most unexpected way. Ancestor worship and flood prediction are woven together. You kneel beside them, breathing in the faint aroma of burnt incense curling up from a bamboo holder. The elders chant softly, eyes half closed, hands resting on their knees. It's peaceful, slow, almost hypnotic. But behind the prayers you sense another layer. These rituals are also a chance to remember past floods and to ask for guidance. One elder unfolds a brittle sheet of bamboo paper, etched with spidery characters recording major floods going back generations. Each entry marks not only the river's height but who survived, who lost their fields, and which ancestors sacrificed the most to rebuild. You feel a chill realizing how thin the line was between feast and famine, between life and death. Historians still argue whether these ancestor rituals were about asking for supernatural help, or simply a way to pass on collective memory. Either way, it worked. Each year, young farmers sat at their grandparents' feet, hearing flood stories woven into prayers. Those stories taught them which months were most dangerous, how to store rice, where to herd their water buffalo when the river broke its banks. A gentle voice interrupts your thoughts, a grandmother explaining how they offer sticky rice and fresh flowers to the spirits, hoping the ancestors will warn them in dreams if a flood comes too soon. You catch yourself smiling. It may sound superstitious, but it's strangely comforting, a nightly insurance policy against disaster. One fringe belief you overhear: if an ancestor's name is forgotten, their spirit might turn vengeful and cause a flood. Historians still argue about whether that was a moral lesson or a true fear, but either way, everyone here seems to remember every name on those bamboo scrolls. You follow the villagers as they move outside, arranging bamboo poles in the courtyard as markers of family strength. Each pole stands for a family line, and every season they renew them with fresh bamboo. These poles serve a double purpose: a prayer for good luck and a tally of which lineages have survived the river's anger year after year. A young boy points to one leaning bamboo pole, its tip already greening with a new shoot. His grandfather tells him it means the ancestors are blessing their family with fresh growth. You glance down, amused at how bamboo's stubborn vitality can feel like a message from the dead. Around you, women gather to weave new bamboo mats for offerings, their hands moving rhythmically as they swap stories about past floods. One woman laughs about how, the year she married, a sudden flood sent her entire wedding party scrambling up a neighbor's stilt house. The bamboo mats got soaked, but the ceremony went on anyway. That kind of resilience is the heartbeat of these people. You hear the soft click of bamboo beads sliding on a counting string as an elder keeps track of donations for the shrine's repairs. Even their counting tools are bamboo, a reminder of how completely this plant supports their world. You slip away from the crowd for a moment, resting under a mango tree while the breeze rattles through the bamboo fences. You can almost imagine those ancestors peeking through the fence slats, making sure you're paying attention to every sign, every swirl in the river. One final offering is placed at the altar, a bowl of steamed rice topped with a few salt-cured fish. It's a humble gift, but meaningful, a symbol of survival through countless storms. And the elders bow low, asking softly for one more season of mercy. As the villagers start to disperse, you feel the weight of these traditions pressing gently on your shoulders, a sense of responsibility shared by everyone here. Their ancestors stand with them, in memory, in ritual, in every pole sunk into the mud. The bamboo, steady and patient, waits with them, year after year. You step back into the morning light, the echoes of chants still lingering in your ears, and feel ready to keep walking. There is more to learn, and the river, as always, will have something to say. The day grows warmer as you continue down the path, the air thick with the perfume of blooming water hyacinths, and you spot a group of farmers hunched over something curious, a row of bamboo tubes lined up like drinking gourds. But these aren't for sipping water. They're early rain gauges, and they're as clever as any weather app you could imagine. Each bamboo tube is open at the top, with a carved mark near its base to measure overflow. When the monsoon arrives, the villagers place these tubes on bamboo stands all across the paddies, ready to catch rainfall. As the water rises inside, they measure it daily with simple sticks. Nothing fancy, no glass dials or polished brass. Just the same bamboo that holds up their roofs, but transformed into a scientific tool. One older woman shows you how she tips out the water every morning, then resets the tube for another day. She laughs that she could tell a heavy rainfall coming even before the tube fills, just by listening to the patter on her bamboo roof at night. You grin along with her, because it sounds about as reliable as modern meteorology sometimes. Historians still argue whether these bamboo rain gauges were developed by villagers themselves or copied from Chinese influence centuries earlier. But either way, they became part of daily flood prediction. You crouch beside one of the gauges, tracing the water lines marked inside like rings on a tree. Each tells a story of a storm, a night of worry, a day of back-breaking work to shore up. A levee. The bamboo records everything, holding no grudges, no lies, just calm honesty. What surprises you most is how these farmers pair the bamboo tubes with simple observation. A sudden heavy rainfall combined with a rising river almost guaranteed a flood. If the bamboo tubes filled in 2 nights, people packed their valuables and rounded up the buffalo. No debate, no hesitation. You overhear a fringe story from a boy helping his grandfather clean a tube. That bamboo, being a living plant, could somehow taste the water to sense if it was an angry flood or a gentle rain. Historians still argue about that one, But the boy seems convinced, and honestly, you don't feel like correcting him. You stand to stretch your legs, looking across the wide, flat fields where water channels snake like tiny silver ribbons. Each of these ditches will soon brim with monsoon rain, and you imagine how carefully villagers monitor them. Every rise, every swirl of silt is a clue. It's a language, and bamboo is the dictionary. The farmers even built small shelters on stilts beside their bamboo rain gauges, places to rest, gossip, or share news while keeping watch on the weather. You climb the rickety steps into one of these huts, feeling the bamboo creak below you. There's a sense of safety up here, a kind of lifeguard tower in a world made of water. One farmer sits cross-legged, balancing a rice cake on his knee, chatting about how his grandfather taught him to read the sound of rain on bamboo roofs. If the droplets hit sharp and fast, the rain would be short. If they drummed low and steady, the rains might last for days. You think of it as nature's lullaby, a code passed down through generations. You watch him lift his bamboo gauge to check it again, shaking his head and muttering that the levels look high already. There's a hint of worry in his voice, but he shrugs it off with a small laugh. After all, what can you do except prepare? You let your gaze wander over the fields, green and shimmering in the sun, and realize how fragile they are. One bad flood, and these crops would vanish, just a memory in the muddy water. But with bamboo, these farmers stand a fighting chance, turning their fear into something manageable, something they can measure and act on. As you climb back down from the bamboo shelter, you feel a sense of calm. You know the river can rise, the rain can pound, but these people have their bamboo tubes, their small, reliable friends to keep watch. It's like a secret handshake with nature, a quiet promise. If you pay attention, maybe the river will spare you. You head on down the path, the soft thump of your sandals against the bamboo planks reminding you of a drumbeat, steady and sure, carrying you forward to whatever comes next. As the morning sun edges higher, you come to one of the narrow bamboo bridges that cross the countless little canals weaving through the paddies. The bridge bounces softly under your step, almost playful, but you can tell it has a deeper purpose. It is yet another way to read the river's moods. Farmers had built these bridges for centuries, tying thick bamboo poles together with plant fiber ropes, then laying woven slats across the top. Their design was so simple, yet so clever, that even heavy floods couldn't sweep them away completely. They flexed with the current, let the water pass, then bounced right back as soon as the flood receded. You pause mid-span, noticing how the bridge dips ever so slightly under your weight. To these villagers, that dip is no joke. It's a clue. If the bridge starts to sag too far before a flood, they know the soil under its supports is loosening. If the slats twist out of line, it means the current has grown fierce. In a sense, these bamboo bridges are like giant flood thermometers. Historians still argue whether these structures were invented for travel alone or for flood prediction as well. Likely it was both. The villagers learned to combine what they saw and felt underfoot into their forecasts, letting their bodies become part of the measuring system. A small boy crosses the bridge, water buffalo following behind him at a lazy plod. He laughs and points out how the bridge creaks more this year than last. His grandfather nods gravely, already planning to reinforce the supports before the rains get any wilder. You can see how these observations, passed casually in conversation, build up into a living library of weather knowledge. And even the bridges themselves tell stories. The older slats are darker, worn smooth by decades of bare feet, while the newer sections stand out pale and fresh. Each repair, each patch of replaced bamboo, marks a memory. A flood that nearly took the bridge, a storm that scattered half a kalva, village's livestock. A year the river gave them mercy instead. You bend to run your fingers over a section of polished bamboo, warm from the morning sun. The grain feels almost oily, preserved by countless storms and the constant rub of footsteps. It's comforting, a small thread of continuity connecting centuries of farmers to the earth and to each other. Some villagers still tie charms to the bamboo railings, tiny knots of colored string, small copper coins, or even carved frogs meant to invite good luck. A fringe belief says frogs guard the bamboo from breaking, since frogs, like the villagers, live in harmony with the rain. Historians still argue whether that practice started as a children's game or a real ritual, but you'd rather not test it by leaving a bridge unguarded. As you move off the bridge and onto the higher trail, you glance back and see a young couple balancing baskets full of seedlings across its flexible planks. They walk with practiced grace, barely disturbing the rhythm of the bamboo. If you squint, you'd swear they were dancing, gliding across the river's surface on a living stage. When the river swells, these bridges might vanish under muddy water for a few days, but the villagers know they'll resurface, ready to carry them again. Bamboo is like that, refusing to die, refusing to break, a stubborn green ally in a world that never stops testing them. You hear a gentle joke floating on the breeze as a group of old men trade teasing stories about who fell off the bridge the most during last year's monsoon. There's laughter, warm and forgiving, as if to say, yes, the water will come, but we will come back too. Standing there, you sense how the villagers trust the bridge, even when it wobbles. They trust it because they built it with their own hands, because they know exactly how it feels underfoot, because they've danced its gentle song since childhood. It is part of their memory, part of their strength. The sun climbs higher still, throwing bright spears of light across the rippling water below. You steady yourself, letting the bridge sway a little one last time before stepping forward into the next bend of the path, ready to keep learning from these green, tireless guardians. You continue down the path, past yet another row of bamboo fences, as the moon begins to fade from the pale morning sky. It strikes you how closely these villagers watched not just the river, but the heavens too. Here in the rice fields, farmers turn to the sky as faithfully as they turn to bamboo, finding patterns in the night that help them predict the monsoon's mood. You settle beside an elderly woman who is carefully trimming bamboo shoots while studying the thin crescent of a waning moon overhead. She explains in a whisper that moon cycles guide everything here. Planting, fishing, even guessing how violent the floodwaters might be. If the bamboo is growing fast during a waxing moon, she says, it could mean the monsoon will hit hard. And soon. Historians still argue whether there was any true science behind linking bamboo growth with lunar cycles, but the pattern feels too consistent to ignore. If nothing else, paying attention to the rhythms of nature kept these farmers alert and curious. You watch her measure a shoot's length with her hand, muttering softly to herself about how quickly it had grown since last week. In her eyes, bamboo that grows hungry under a rising moon is a bamboo that knows a big rain is coming. Sounds impossible maybe, but then again, nature's signs rarely explain themselves in human language. The woman smiles, pressing a hand against the fresh green stalk, telling you that bamboo listens to the same cosmic rhythms as people. You find the idea oddly comforting, like knowing you're not alone under the sky. Elsewhere, a young boy marks lines on a bamboo pole, tracking the dates of full moons. His father joins him, reminding him to check for certain night blooming flowers that appear only before the heaviest storms. The combination of lunar observations, bamboo growth, and flower blossoms makes a kind of lunar calendar, passed down through centuries of trial and error. One fringe belief floats past your ears, carried on the breeze from a pair of gossiping aunties, that if you burn bamboo under a blood moon, you can scare away river demons. Historians still argue whether anyone truly did this or whether it was just a scary story for children. Either way, you wouldn't want to stand too close to a burning bamboo pole. The crackling alone might chase you off. River demon or not, you. Breathe deeply, noticing how even the wind seems to play along with these patterns. The breeze arrives just as the moon sets, rustling through the bamboo leaves with a soft sigh like a tired lullaby. You feel a gentle calm, lulled by the quiet, steady presence of bamboo that will still be here long after one moon cycle ends. And another begins. Looking up, you trace the faint outline of the moon one last time before it slips below the horizon, then lower your gaze back to the rows of green. You realize that for these farmers, the night sky and the bamboo forest were one giant clock, ticking away the hours of their seasonal struggle. They read its hands carefully, never forgetting what was at stake if they misjudged. The woman, still, busy with her trimming, offers you a small bamboo cup of tea. It's flavored with young bamboo leaves, sharp, grassy, refreshing. You take a sip and imagine drinking down the same lunar energy these people believed flowed through every growing stalk. There is poetry in it, isn't there? Bamboo growing. By moonlight, soaking up silent cosmic signals, and then passing on those warnings to the villagers who stake their lives on reading them. It feels like nature itself speaking, if you're patient enough to listen. You stand, handing back the cup with a quiet thank you, and feel a new respect for how these people manage their lives through observation, ritual, and a stubborn determination to find meaning wherever they could. If the moon shifted, if the bamboo bent, if the fish scattered, they paid attention. And maybe, you think with a soft smile, that's the heart of their resilience, a willingness to listen to everything, no matter how small or strange. You glance one more time at the bamboo poles lined up against the dawn, gently shifting in the wind, ready to echo the next flood's approach or the next quiet night's peace. By the time the sun reaches its full strength overhead, you drift toward a small gathering of villagers seated around a crackling cooking fire. They sip tea and share quiet stories, each one woven with a thread of practical advice. Family. Flood legends passed from grandparent to grandchild with the easy cadence of bedtime tales. You settle in the shade of a bamboo awning, letting your ears soak in the soft, hypnotic voices. One woman, her hair tied with a scrap of indigo cloth, tells of how her grandfather taught her the river's temper on long, rainy evenings. If the river sang too quietly, he warned, that meant the flood was creeping in slow, like a thief. But if it roared, it might blow itself out harmlessly. Historians still argue whether that was real wisdom or colorful storytelling, but you can see how it stuck in people's heads. Every little rhyme, every tiny image, helped the next generation remember the signals of survival. A young girl leans in, eyes wide, listening as another elder tells how his own grandfather measured flood patterns by watching water buffalo chew. If the animals paused and stared downstream, he said, that was a sure sign trouble was coming. It seemed silly, but then again, even animals know more than humans sometimes. You sip from a bamboo cup of cool river water, tasting the faint earthy flavor that the villagers say is the river's truth. It's a comforting phrase, the river's truth, as if even disaster can be trusted to follow certain rules. Rules you can learn if you listen closely enough. One fringe legend makes you chuckle. Someone claims a bamboo pole saved their great-great-grandfather by floating him right onto a temple doorstep during a record flood. The villagers love that tale, retelling it every monsoon as if bamboo itself grew arms and rode him to safety. Historians still argue about whether it's true, but the image is too good to let go. The conversation drifts, becoming dreamlike. In the heat of midday, they talk of lucky bamboo charms tied to babies' cribs so the river spirits might pass them by. They talk of floating lanterns launched on a rising flood to guide ancestors home, and of village dogs howling on flood nights. As a warning, each story folds into the next, the same way the river folds around the banks, carrying memory as surely as it carries silk. A grandmother pats your hand gently and asks if you'd like more tea, her smile wrinkled with decades of weathered patience. You nod thankful, and she pours, the bamboo spout dribbling just a bit as it always does. That imperfection feels human, a reminder that these people survive by accepting small flaws rather than fighting them. The children toss little pebbles into the river, watching how the ripples spread, another simple ritual to test water depth and flow. Their games teach them what the flood might do as surely as any adult's bamboo pole. It's a calm, casual way to make knowledge part of play, so no child grows up ignorant of the river's power. You lean back, letting the drone of cicadas and the slow heartbeat of the river soothe your mind. There's an easy confidence here, born of familiarity. Yes, the river can break your heart, but it will also feed you, quench your thirst, and remind you every year just how strong you can be. You catch one last story before moving on. An old man describing how he first learned to watch the shape of floating weeds. If they gathered on one bank, the current was shifting, and trouble might come next. The river leaves hints everywhere, he says, if you care to look, and you do care. You listen deeply, letting these stories and superstitions sink in like soft rain on thirsty soil. Maybe they blur the line between myth and memory, but they also carry a quiet power, a roadmap through disaster drawn with bamboo ink. As you stand to leave, the villagers wave you off with gentle smiles, telling you to stay safe, to keep your eyes open, to trust the bamboo. Their voices feel like a lullaby, wrapping you in calm determination, and you promise to carry these stories forward as you continue your journey along the river's edge. The afternoon sun beats down hard as you follow a worn path back to the heart of the village, where farmers are gathered around piles of freshly cut bamboo. There's a kind of organized chaos here. Families stacking poles, checking for cracks, debating which pieces are straight enough to stand guard against the next flood. It's not just a personal job, it's a communal ritual, woven into the very bones of the village. You pause near a group of women weaving long, strong mats from split bamboo. These mats will reinforce the riverbanks when the water starts to rise, laid out in thick layers to slow erosion and protect the levees. Their hands move with mechanical certainty, as if they've been weaving since before they could walk. One woman laughs as she tells you they measure a village's strength by its bamboo. If the stockpile is healthy, the village is healthy. If the bamboo is short, well, then even the bravest farmers might start to worry. It's a green currency, traded freely among neighbors who will not let each other drown. Historians still argue whether bamboo sharing was formalized in some kind of written agreement or simply a handshake deal. Judging by the warm, easy way people hand poles back and forth, you suspect it was trust, pure and simple trust, anchored by years of working side by side. One older man, face lined like an old rice sack, shows you how they lash the poles together into fences that can be rolled out in minutes if a bank begins to fail. He calls it a bamboo army, ready to fight the river, and you can't help smiling at the image of bamboo soldiers holding the line. Further along the river, you spot a team of young men constructing giant fish traps from even more bamboo. These traps will keep food coming during a flood, but they also double as current blockers, slowing down rushing water before it can carve out the riverbank. It's ingenious. Multi-use engineering before engineering had a fancy name. A fringe belief slips your way from a talkative teenager. If you accidentally break a bamboo pole while building flood barriers, you have to apologize to it. Otherwise, the bamboo might curse the village with even worse rains. Historians still argue whether that was superstition or just a fun scare tactic to make the kids work more carefully. Either way, no one wants to risk angering the bamboo. You admire how they treat the bamboo almost like an honored elder, respected, spoken to, even blessed before cutting. There's a profound humility here, a recognition that bamboo holds up their homes, their bridges, their very lives. That respect shows in every step of preparation. From trimming leaves to binding poles. One group takes a break, sipping cool tea under the shade of a large mango tree. They joke about whose bamboo walls leaked the worst last season and promise to help each other build stronger this time. There's no bitterness in their voices, just resilience, baked into their bones after a lifetime of working alongside a river that never truly sleeps. You look over the neat stacks of bamboo, each pole measured, marked, set aside for a specific role. Some will become fences. Some will become bridges. Some will form giant baskets to catch fish or even hold down floating homes in a worst-case flood. The organization is impressive, a quiet choreography of survival. A soft breeze passes through, rattling the standing poles so they click together like bamboo wind chimes. The sound is gentle, musical, almost soothing, a lullaby for a worried heart. And you realize that this entire village, no matter how tense they get when the clouds roll in, is connected through these green stalks, a living web of trust and shared purpose. You take one last look at the piles of bamboo before moving on, grateful for the glimpse into how a community stays strong together. Their confidence, their laughter, their skill, it's like a woven net that keeps everyone safe, season after season. As you leave the clearing, you pass a boy carefully sanding a bamboo pole smoother than polished stone. His focus is fierce, his small hands moving steadily. Someday he will lead a family of his own, and you know, deep down, that he will teach them exactly what he's learning now, that bamboo. And neighbors are the only allies you can count on when the river comes knocking. By the time you wander back toward the rice paddies, the sun is slipping lower, casting the whole world in a golden haze. The farmers are moving more slowly now, weighed down by hours of labor, but their focus stays sharp. Their lives depend on the harvest and on the delicate balance that bamboo flood predictions help preserve. You see a young woman gently patting the tips of emerald green rice plants, checking for new shoots. Rice is everything here. The backbone of daily meals, the measure of family wealth, even a kind of sacred blessing. And bamboo flood prediction is its constant protector. One old farmer squints toward the horizon, remembering a season decades past when they ignored the bamboo's warnings. He tells you how the river came in the night, swallowing paddies almost ready to harvest. It left the family with nothing but slimy mud and broken dreams. Since then, he says, they trust the bamboo every time, no questions asked. Historians still argue whether ancient rice varieties were bred to withstand flood more easily, or if that resilience grew only because farmers were so skilled at predicting the water. Probably both, you think, watching how they work in perfect rhythm with the river's cycle. Nearby, a group of teenagers lays bamboo poles across the lower dike, ready to lift the young rice above floodwaters if the banks burst. The system is so simple and brilliant you almost laugh. Build a floating cradle of bamboo, lash rice bundles to it, and let it bob along until the water goes down. It feels like something you'd see on a nature documentary about clever animals. And you wonder if humans really are so different. One fringe story filters through the air as an elder shares it with a cluster of wide-eyed kids. If you plant rice too greedily, taking more land than the ancestors approve, the river will punish you by sending a flood. Historians still argue if that was meant as spiritual discipline or simply an early form of environmental caution. But either way, no one dares tempt fate. You help a young boy balance a basket of rice seedlings on his shoulder, noticing how carefully He steps around a bamboo pole stuck in the mud, its bright red ribbon fluttering. It's a boundary marker showing where last year's flood reached. No one plants below that line. Bamboo remembers where people might forget. There's a moment of quiet as the wind dies, leaving only the chirp of tree frogs and the far-off cry of an egret. You stand among the rice, breathing the rich, damp air, and feel how fragile this cycle is. Rice depends on just enough water, not too much, arriving not too early, not too late. It's a balancing act that would make a modern city planner break into tears. And yet these farmers, guided by bamboo and observation and sheer nerve, manage to pull it off season after season. If you needed proof that humanity can work with nature instead of against it, you'd find it right here. In these simple paddies fed by a moody river. One grandfather waves you closer, pointing proudly at rows of rice nearly as tall as your chest. He tells you bamboo saved those plants 3 times already this season, giving him just enough warning to raise the levees. His smile is gentle, the lines on his face like river currents drawn by time itself. You reach down to touch the muddy soil, still faintly warm from the day's sun. The bamboo poles sway softly, keeping watch, almost like guardians. You wonder if they feel protective of this rice the way the farmers do. Maybe that's why they're treated with such reverence, even blessed before being cut. A girl nearby hums an old harvest song, the words floating through the dusk in a lullaby rhythm. You realize the song mentions bamboo, praising it as the green soldier who stands watch when the river forgets its promise. You smile, charmed by the thought of bamboo as a faithful sentry standing between hunger and hope. As darkness begins to creep across the fields, oil lamps wink on around the village one by one. The farmers finish up their chores, packing away baskets and smoothing the edges of their bamboo barriers. A hush settles over everything, broken only by the rustle of bamboo leaves swaying in the river breeze, as if they too are singing the rice to sleep. Night settles in deep and quiet, with only a scattering of oil lamps sending a warm glow across the village. You follow a narrow path to a small communal hut where villagers gather to share news. Inside, the walls are decorated with bamboo mats and tools, symbols of pride as much as practicality. Here, you learn that while farmers have their bamboo flood forecasts, the emperor's officials, far away in the cities, sometimes wanted to claim credit for flood control. A line of bureaucrats would ride out, robes swishing, to inspect bamboo markers they hadn't placed, scribbling notes on scrolls about how well the people were following orders. You watch a farmer chuckle as he tells how these officials praise the villagers for innovative bamboo flood measures the villagers had been practicing for centuries before the empire even took notice. It's the oldest joke in the paddies. A bureaucrat arrives after the work is done and tries to take the glory. Historians still argue whether these officials helped fund bamboo planting or merely showed up to pose for statues, but either way, their presence left a trace in the records. Somewhere in the imperial archives, carefully inked pages describe bamboo poles as humble yet invaluable instruments of the floodplain. The villagers would probably have laughed at that too. One old man leans forward, his voice a warm hush, recalling how the officials would sometimes declare a flood was manageable based on a quick look at a bamboo pole, while the farmers, with far more experience, had already moved their animals to higher ground. That gentle sarcasm floats around the room, light as river foam, yet even with all the nonsense, the farmers didn't truly hate these officials. They played along, bowed politely, and then went right back to trusting their own eyes in their own bamboo. If the pole shifted, if the river sang its warning song, no imperial scroll could change their minds. A boy in the hut listens wide-eyed as someone describes how one official ordered them to replace all bamboo markers with fancy wooden posts. Within a year, termites had eaten the posts and a flood wiped away an entire harvest. After that, even the most powerful governors learned to leave the bamboo alone. One fringe tale has grown up around that story, that the spirit of the bamboo itself punished the official for trying to replace it. Historians still argue whether villagers really believed in a bamboo spirit, but judging by the respectful way they still handle every green stalk, you wouldn't bet against it. As you sit cross-legged on a bamboo mat, the earthy smell of damp river air drifting in, you realize how skillfully these farmers balanced their own knowledge with the state's demands. They knew how to respect an inspector, how to bow at the right moment, yet never surrender their ancestral wisdom. Someone passes you a cup of warm rice wine, its sweet tang soothing in the cool air, and you raise it with a small toast to these practical, unshakable people. In their world, power came and went, but bamboo remained. It never lied, never tried to look more important than it was, and it never needed permission to grow. You listen to more chatter as the oil lamp flickers, catching words about harvest, quotas and tax collectors, then drifting back to bamboo talk. Someone jokes that if bamboo could collect taxes, it would do a fairer job than any governor. The hut erupts in soft laughter, and for a moment, even the worries of flood season seem lighter. As the conversation winds down, you stand to stretch, your back creaking nearly as much as the woven bamboo floor. You look around the simple hut, at the polished bamboo cups, the gentle sound of wind through bamboo eaves, and feel a kind of peace. This world has faced countless storms, countless decrees from faraway capitals. But here, bamboo still rules, rooted in the earth, answering only to the river. You step outside into the night air, where frogs sing from the canals and the stars shimmer above the dark water. The village feels timeless, cradled between earth and sky, guarded by bamboo poles that wait patiently for whatever comes next. Dawn comes with a gentle splash of light creeping through thin river mists, and you follow a dirt path toward a patch of dry, cracked earth. It surprises you after so much talk of flooding, but sometimes even this place suffers a year when the river does not come at all. You find a group of farmers gathered around a row of bamboo poles stuck into the dusty riverbed, measuring nothing. The river is barely a trickle. The bamboo stands straight and stiff, no rippling or creaking, as if holding its breath. It feels wrong, out of tune, like a missing heartbeat. One old woman shakes her head, clicking her tongue at the sight. She remembers seasons when there was too much water, then seasons like this when the river starved them. In those dry years, the same bamboo that warned of flood became a messenger of a different danger: drought. Historians still argue whether these drought cycles followed any pattern or were completely random. Villagers had theories that the river took a year off to rest, or that the ancestors were punishing greed, or even that faraway wars upstream were somehow stealing their water. You crouch beside a bamboo pole, its base caked with cracked mud. The farmer next to you says they leave the pole standing no matter what, a sign of respect, but also a record. Even an empty bamboo marker is a history lesson. You can't predict a drought if you forget the last one. There's a sad hush. In the village these seasons, you see it in half-finished bamboo rafts left leaning against trees, in idle fish traps drying in the sun, in the careful way people ration water from shallow wells. Still, they gather in the evenings, talk about weather patterns, share the same jokes, the same songs. Their spirits bend but don't break. A young girl shows you her water jar made of old bamboo, polished so many times it shines like glass. She learned to carry water on her shoulders from the nearest deep well, balancing with a bamboo pole across her back. You imagine that pole biting gently into her skin, a reminder of how even drought seasons tie the people to bamboo. Some families even look to bamboo for drought solutions. Its hollow culms can store water for days if plugged at both ends, a quiet, reserve when every other container is empty. Farmers tell you bamboo saved them more than once when the wells ran dry. One fringe belief you hear whispers of around the cooking fires is that if bamboo stops growing entirely, the world itself is sick. Historians still argue whether this was simply metaphor, but you feel the truth of it in your bones. A world where bamboo will not grow is surely a world in danger. As you walk through the brittle paddies, the river little more than a brown ribbon, you hear soft clapping from children playing a rhythm game with dried bamboo sticks. Even in a drought, bamboo gives them a way to laugh, to make music, to remember their roots. The elders watch the sky, scanning for clouds, praying the monsoon will come back. At night, they leave offerings of water by the bamboo poles, almost as if to coax the river to rise again. You can see a bowl of rainwater placed carefully by a grandmother, reflecting the pale stars, hoping the river gods might notice. There is a powerful humility in these gestures. They know they cannot command the rain, cannot bribe the river, but they still try to befriend it through the language of bamboo. As the breeze rustles through a few pale green bamboo leaves, you feel a hint of hope. This place has survived countless droughts. The bamboo might stand dry now, but it is ready, waiting patiently for the floods to return. Its roots deep, its will unbroken. You move on, leaving behind the dry poles, quietly confident that soon the river will come again, and the bamboo will once more dance to its restless song. You follow a gentle bend in the river where the banks widen into a flat, breezy floodplain, and for a moment you feel as if you've stepped into another world entirely. A pair of merchant boats rest near the shore, their sails lowered, their hulls loaded with bright pottery and bolts of silk. These are foreign traders, drawn by the rich paddies and the hard-working people of this bamboo-guarded land. You see their curious gazes drifting toward the villagers' bamboo poles, no doubt trying to puzzle out what they're for. And before long, the locals begin explaining their flood markers, eager to share and perhaps impress these visitors. From distant ports, one Chinese trader scratches his head, examining the poles driven into the riverbank. A Khmer sailor, balancing a basket of spices, watches villagers tap the bamboo stakes and measure the mud line. He squints, then laughs in disbelief. Where he comes from, he says, they rely on temple priests alone to predict floods. But these Vietnamese farmers? They trust bamboo. Historians still argue whether those passing traders picked up the idea and brought it home, planting their own bamboo flood markers. Maybe, maybe not, but it wouldn't be surprising. After all, who could? Watch such a simple, elegant method and not be tempted to copy it? A curious Portuguese sailor, too sunburnt to blend in, leans down to trace the flood marks on one bamboo stake. A boy nearby explains how they carve each notch and tie tiny charms to mark the worst years. The sailor seems charmed, as if bamboo itself might become the next treasure he brings back to Europe. You catch a whiff of the merchant's peppery cargo, mingling with the damp, grassy smell of river mud, and the combination feels like a meeting of worlds: spices and rice, silks and bamboo. Trade and tradition all at once. One fringe rumor floats around among the villagers that a visiting monk once tried to bless the bamboo poles with a holy water ritual, hoping to make them more powerful flood guardians. Historians still argue if that blessing ever happened, but the villagers still talk about it on long rainy nights. Smiling at the memory, you follow the visitors as they wander through the village, pointing out fish traps made of bamboo, bamboo water scoops, bamboo roofs. The traders seem stunned by how versatile the material is, asking endless questions. How do you keep it from rotting? How do you split it? How do you know which stalks to cut? A gentle old woman answers them, explaining that you harvest bamboo under a waning moon so its water content is lower, helping it last. Her calm confidence seems to impress the travelers more than any royal ambassador could have done. Standing nearby, you realize these bamboo markers do more than measure floods. They tell outsiders that this place is not to be pitied. Its people have skills, wisdom, and resilience. Even if their lives look simple at first glance. At dusk, you see the traders haggling over rice and dried fish, while still casting side glances at the bamboo poles half buried in river silt. One Khmer sailor tests a pole himself, pressing against it, smiling when it flexes but does not. The farmer beside him nods, clearly proud of this subtle demonstration. And why not be proud? These farmers turned a fast-growing grass into a flood prediction network so reliable that foreigners stand in awe. You sense the pride in every conversation, every demonstration, every child who recites how to read the poles for strangers. As the merchant boats prepare to leave, lanterns swinging from their masts, the villagers gather to wave goodbye, knowing the river will bring more visitors next season. You wonder how many other places will learn from these bamboo lessons. How many rivers far away might one day sprout their own quiet forest of poles. And in that moment, you see bamboo as more than a tool. It becomes a bridge, linking cultures, linking knowledge, whispering across oceans. This is how we survive. Night has fallen fully now, the river's surface catching moonlight in 1,000 tiny flashes. And you follow the gentle sound of singing drifting from the village square. A group of villagers has gathered there, holding bamboo flutes and small bamboo percussion sticks. Their music is a lullaby, slow, repetitive, impossibly calming. You settle among them, listening as the warm night air carries the notes out across the paddies. It isn't just for entertainment. These bamboo songs have a purpose. They help soothe people during the anxious days of rising floods, calming frayed nerves when the river's roar grows too loud. One young man explains that they believe bamboo itself likes to be sung to, that its fibers, its hollow body, somehow respond to human voices. Historians still argue whether there's any truth to that, but you want to believe it. The idea that a plant can be comforted by your song feels gentle, kind, and maybe even true. The villagers tap out rhythms on bamboo drums, a pulse that mirrors the steady beat of their own hearts. The patterns are simple, repeating again and again, and you realize how perfect that is for a village on a floodplain. Repetition means safety. Repetition means you know what comes next. You hear someone start a chant, a soft, swaying melody about the river spirits. The words ask the river to rise kindly, to spare the fields, to let the rice grow tall. Around the singer, others join in, layering their voices like threads in a woven mat. It's hypnotic, almost dreamlike, and you feel your own breathing slowing. To match the tempo, a fringed tail comes up during a pause that the bamboo flutes can carry prayers downstream, so even the river gods far away will hear them. Historians still argue if that's wishful thinking or a true ritual, but tonight, no one minds the difference. Children drift off to sleep against their parents' legs, the bamboo flutes still whispering through the dark. There is a hush that settles over everyone, a sense that for a few minutes, no flood, no storm, no night terror can break this fragile peace. You look around and see oil lamps flickering along bamboo walls, casting long shadows of fish traps, baskets, and poles. The shadows dance gently with the song, reminding you of river waves, rising, falling, harmless for now. The old bamboo storyteller begins reciting verses older than memory, about a time the river stayed gentle for 20 years when rice harvests overflowed and no one went hungry. He reminds the children that the river can be a friend, even if it tests them. The kids nod sleepily, their eyes bright in the lamplight. You watch as one of the flute players sets his instrument carefully beside a bamboo pole, almost like an offering. Maybe it is, a tiny gift to thank bamboo for keeping watch. As the Song winds down, a breeze slips through the square, rustling the bamboo mats and tugging lightly at your sleeves. It feels like a quiet sigh, as if even the river is relaxing. You breathe in, slow and deep, letting your own shoulders drop, soothed by the easy rhythm of this village's nightly ritual, and you think about how lucky they are, in a way, to have these songs, these poles, these old stories that make fear a little smaller. If bamboo can help you predict the future, bamboo music can help you survive the present. The musicians finish their final notes, letting them fade into the dark, and for a moment, no one speaks. The hush is complete. Then softly someone thanks the bamboo, and you cannot help but whisper a thank you, too, because in a world that floods, that changes, that tries to break you, it is no small thing to find something that listens back. Dawn begins to creep across the village rooftops, pale pink and gold chasing away the deep river dark of night. You follow a quiet trail, noticing how the bamboo poles look almost silver in this early light. It's a new day, and with it, you see how bamboo knowledge has been shifting, century by century, refusing to stand still. Villagers here still trust their bamboo flood markers, but over the years they've blended new tools and ideas into the mix. They build higher dikes with stone and concrete now, but they keep bamboo poles planted right beside them. They measure rainfall with modern plastic gauges, but bamboo tubes stand faithfully next to them, ready as a backup. One farmer points proudly to a small radio, crackling with weather updates, then gestures toward his row of bamboo stakes. He shrugs and says with a grin, "Technology breaks. Bamboo never does." You have to laugh. He's not wrong. Historians still argue whether bamboo methods should be preserved exactly as they were or allowed to evolve. But the villagers don't seem bothered. To them, blending old and new is just common sense. Bamboo poles stay because they're trusted. New tech joins them because, well, why not? You pass a teenager scanning a smartphone app for rainfall patterns, then glancing across to check the bamboo poles in the river mud. There's something endearing about how easily he moves between centuries, 1 foot in a modern world, 1 foot in the bamboo world that raised him. Further down the path, an elderly woman shows you a giant woven bamboo basket built with stronger, thicker splits than the ones from her childhood. Floodwaters have grown fiercer with changing climate, she says, so they had to adapt the weave. The basket, once only for fish, can now hold sandbags too. That is bamboo's gift. It adapts as easily as the people who grow it. One fringe debate drifts through the conversation that bamboo's flexible strength makes it a better symbol of human resilience than any stone monument ever could. Historians still argue if that idea is romantic nonsense or pure brilliance, but you feel the truth in it as you watch villagers move through their morning chores. You pause to admire a new bamboo bridge. Its supports reinforced with iron rods, but its walkway still woven from bamboo planks. A boy hops across with his breakfast basket, balancing like a tightrope walker. You wonder if even his grandchildren will still trust the same springy bamboo boards, no matter how many other inventions come along. Near the riverbank, a group of farmers talk about building a new sluice gate to channel floodwater away from the rice paddies. They sketch out ideas in the mud with bamboo sticks, leaning on their bamboo poles as they argue over angles and measurements. It's a lovely contradiction, ancient tools helping dream up modern plans. The river itself seems to listen, flowing steadily past the familiar markers. You realize that while water changes its course constantly, bamboo has a way of anchoring human memory, making the river's story easier to read. You pause to breathe in the warm, river-scented air, letting the calm settle over you. Here, progress is not a rejection of the past, but an embrace of every lesson these green stalks have taught. One young woman sums it up perfectly as she sets a fresh bamboo pole into place. "It will bend," she says, tapping it lightly, "but it will stand." And that, you think, might be the entire secret of this village's survival. As long as there is bamboo, there will be hope. As long as there is hope, they will rebuild, season after season, no matter how the world changes around them. The sun glints off the wet mud, flashing against the bamboo's pale skin, and you feel its quiet strength once more. Generation after generation, these poles have refused to break, absorbing all the river's fury and gently forgiving it each year. The morning is bright now, and you take a last slow stroll through the village, where the bamboo poles stand tall, green, and patient, waiting for whatever the season will bring. You pause at one, running your fingers over the worn notches, each cut a witness to some past storm, some remembered flood. A group of children gather nearby, their laughter spilling through the air as they play beside the river. They toss pebbles into the current, then race to see whose pebble will be carried away first. Between them, you catch glimpses of their families still checking bamboo poles, adjusting water gates, always keeping one watchful eye on the rivers. Lazy swirl. You wander over to where a young woman, no older than 20, is carefully retying a bright cloth around the tip of a bamboo stake. It flutters in the breeze, a kind of silent conversation with the river. She tells you she learned the ritual from her grandmother, who learned it from hers. The cloth a symbol of respect, a polite greeting to the river spirits, an acknowledgement that no matter how clever people become, they will never truly command. The water. Historians still argue whether that cloth charm has any practical value. But you see the peace it brings to the young woman's face, and you know that's reason enough. In the distance, an older man inspects the bamboo fencing along a low embankment, checking for rot, tapping the poles with a practiced ear. A hollow thump, a nod of approval, a satisfied grin. You notice how these gestures, repeated 1,000 times, create a sense of security far beyond any machine. A boy calls to you, waving a tiny bamboo flute, and plays a few hesitant notes. The sound is thin but sweet, carried off by the morning breeze. You smile, hearing the same spirit in that melody that you heard in the villagers' chants, in their quiet conversations, in the creaking bamboo itself. One fringe belief makes the rounds again, that if bamboo ever truly vanishes from this place, the river will rise in anger and refuse to recede. Historians still argue about that, but in this village, no one takes the chance. Bamboo is planted, protected, sung to, and rebuilt, generation after generation. You step carefully onto another bamboo bridge, its planks still slick with dew. Looking down, you see your reflection shift in the moving water, then blur with the bamboo shadows. It strikes you that these poles are a living record, echoing human fears, hopes, mistakes, and triumphs across centuries. Every flood that took a house, every monsoon that spared a crop, every child born into this world of wet soil and green sentinels, the bamboo remembers them all. You take a deep breath, letting the sense of mud and fresh leaves settle into your chest and feel your heartbeat. Slow. Here, history isn't locked away in dusty books but standing in front of you, rooted in a riverbank. The villagers wave as you pass, calling good wishes. Some remind you to come back next season to see the bamboo stand tall again, to hear new stories woven with old truths. You promise them you will, because you see it clearly now. This place is more than water and mud and rice. It is a living collaboration between people and nature, a fragile handshake renewed every season, held together by a plant that is humble and strong all at once. As you step away from the river, you look back one final time, catching the soft glint of sunlight on the bamboo tips. They stand, green and brave, ready for the next rain, the next challenge. the next child who will learn their secrets. And you smile, comforted, knowing bamboo will still be here, watching over the river and its people, as it always has, as it always will. The village slips deeper into afternoon calm, and you find a quiet place under a broad-leafed banana tree, letting your mind rest from the long journey. The bamboo poles stand steady in the river, soft green and gold under the gentle sun. Their reflections waver just slightly on the water's surface, as if they are breathing along with you. Let your eyes drift closed now, picturing those tall stalks swaying ever so slowly, catching each breeze with a hush that sounds almost like a lullaby. You can almost hear the faint echoes of bamboo flutes, the rhythmic tapping of farmers' hands, the soft laughter of children who trust these poles to stand watch through any flood. Feel your shoulders drop, loosen the muscles in your jaw, and let the quiet confidence of this bamboo village wrap around you. There is no rush here, no panic, no harsh commands, only steady patience, a partnership with nature. The bamboo, with its subtle power, stands for you too. Flexible but unbreakable, humble but determined, ready to bend when storms arrive and rise tall again when they pass. Let that idea ease you into sleep. The river's voice is fading for now, softened by the afternoon breeze, cradled by the bamboo's embrace. Let the sounds grow slower in your mind. Let your breath follow the quiet rhythm. Let the memories of flood stories and green poles slip gently away. Rest, knowing the watchers are still there, guarding dreams as faithfully as they guard the rice. Rest, knowing you are safe tonight.